Yeah, me too. How are you doing?
Well, it's really early for me here, so I went onto Twitter to read my president's tweets so I could get my heart rate up enough to like be awake enough for you, and it worked better than coffee, and I'm actually not kidding about that.
I'm not surprised by that,
No, my
but
hot tip for anyone. Like, it does not matter where on the spectrum of like what you believe is. Go to whoever you are diametrically opposed to, read their tweets, and I swear to you, it's like coffee times 10. Like, I feel ready to talk.
just maybe not every day, because that might the
No,
stress levels might just.
it no, it really does. No, I absolutely agree with that statement. It's just it's very early for me over here, and I needed to make sure I was semi alert for you. At least
Yeah,
like, eyes were open, I could process language.
yeah. No, I know the feeling. So it's sort of the end of the workday here, and I'm a bit like,
Oh,
oh, flagging just a little bit, but
well,
we'll be
you have a
fine.
few people you could read their tweets from over there that could.
Oh God, yeah,
My
yeah.
husband and I were ready to immigrate over to where you are, and then like there was the whole big thing, and we looked at each other like, you know what, we don't like where that's going. We're gonna find
Right.
somewhere else to go to. This
Right.
is scaring us.
Do you know what? I've actually had a bit of a social media break over the last week or so,
How's that
just
going for you?
because, like, good. Like, I'm not like, right, you are not allowed to go on any social media at all, because that's counterproductive. But I'm just like, do you know what? I'm just gonna stop spending quite as much time engaging with this stuff, particularly Twitter. Like, I'm very lucky that my little corner of Twitter seems to be quite nice, and I don't get a lot of like trolling or anything. I have a lot of supportive people who follow me, which is wonderful. But I just think there's like so much aggression, and there's so much like reactivity and stuff. And when you're consuming that for several hours every day, it's not very good for your brain. Um, so yeah, so I'm sort of just taking a little step back, just having, I found, and I was discussing this with somebody the other day. I said, throughout this year, one by one, at some point, I have lost access to all of my communities, be that family,
Mm.
friends, work, whatever. And I have found myself more reliant on reaching the online community, on, just kind of reaching people and being seen. But that's not necessarily very good for my mental health. And am I making sense? Like, and I think
Yes, so
that
much.
it also really hires our expectations, because like everything that happens, every ableist thing that happens or whatever, becomes this huge thing that we must tweet about. And actually in everyday life, we just need to let a few of those things slide, because we've got to be human beings as well.
And I think intention matters a lot in what
Yeah,
we let slide or not slide.
100%.
Yeah, and there's certain things that's like, I don't know. I don't want to get everyone on my case. I already get yelled at enough on Twitter. I probably shouldn't step my foot into there, but I do feel like there's certain things that's like it's okay to say that we can't do certain things. Like there
Yeah,
are some things I am not able to do. Like that's why I'm disabled. I'm cool with
yeah,
that term. And everyone's jumping down everyone's throats on, well, stop with saying that Trump, can't do this and that he's not able to do this. It's like, yeah, he actually isn't able to do this. It's okay to point that
yeah.
out. He
And
is
that's,
not mentally stable. It looks like he did have a stroke back last year.
yeah,
He's obviously not able to string words together coherently. That would
yeah.
like I can't be a firefighter. I honestly
Uh,
could not do that job.
it's really hard, isn't it? And I think it's a really complex thing, because I'm not anti social media, and I wouldn't have built the platform that I have without it. But
Yeah.
I've had cause to reassess my sort of relationship with that over the last couple of weeks. And I found myself, something might happen, or I might have a thought about something, like, oh, I'll go on Twitter and write a thread about that. And then I've stopped myself doing it, and I've gone, actually, no, I'm just going to experience it and
Oh
not
yeah.
not tell the world. And I'm kind of sitting all right with that. Like, that feels quite good, because I'm then not spending the next 3 hours glued to my phone either, just talking to lots of people who agree with me or arguing with people that don't.
I have it not just for Twitter, because I don't go on Twitter very often, except to like it's just where I interact with people's like views and news and stuff. And
Yeah,
I go on Instagram a lot for like,
yeah,
look, this is my life. Look at the pretty this. And I used to go live a lot more often because I have a small farm. And I'm like, oh, look at the chickens, and or this happened. And my husband has gotten so used to like he's very good at like, you know what, maybe just experience the thing. Like put the camera
yeah,
down. Put the
yeah.
put the phone down.
I think it just becomes a habit without realizing.
Yeah.
And it I've been spending a lot of time over the last couple of weeks thinking about where I spend my energy and
Mm.
what I want to prioritize my energy on. And I think, you know, less and less of that is social media, because it's just, I kind of feel like I'm at a stage in my life where it's not necessarily serving me as it was before. And like I say, I love kind of the community that I've built in those spaces, and I love being able to reach people and people being able to message me and saying, oh my god, your content has genuinely like changed my outlook, or I've booked a holiday based on your content. Like,
Mm.
that's amazing. But I'm a writer and I'm a blogger, and first and foremost that is who I am. But to do that so-called successfully, I need to be a social media manager. I need to be a website developer. I need to be an accountant. And I'm kind of, do you know what? I'm feeling like I'm going to just rebel against all of this and go, do you know what? I'm still going to write, and I'm still going to blog, and I'm still going to write a newsletter. But I might actually just prioritize that and get rid of the rest of it. You know, I'm not 100%. I'm still weighing this all up in my head.
Right there with you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just an interesting thing, isn't it? And I think it's all been brought into sharper focus this year with the pandemic, and with the fact that we've all been spending more time online, and social media has been our main way of connecting with people. But yeah, I'm not so sure that I want to continue in that way. And I would much prefer to put my energy into writing something that feels like it's from the heart and that isn't necessarily just performative or what the audience expects. And you know, if that means that my readership falls, then that will be a shame. But in terms of the difference that it will make to my life, I kind of feel like it's worth the compromise.
I hear that. When I was a photographer, it was the big frustration because I was doing this in the middle of like Facebook had just started.
Yeah,
Twitter had just started. Like I'm that old, and it was so hard to be like, but I'm a photographer. I want to be photographing, working on my images. I want, you know, but it's like to get the clients in, you had to learn these new mediums. You had to learn what
yeah,
hashtags were. You had to learn how to tweet effectively. You had to learn how to work on your website and how to blog and how to make sure the keywords were all set up. Like this is like Google early days. And it
yeah,
was so frustrating because you're like, no, I'm an artist. I would like to be arting. Like I don't
yeah,
want to be
yeah,
learning how to be a web manager and a social media manager, and then I have to learn how to do graphics pretty. I'm not a graphic designer, I'm a photographer. It was like, and now I'm stuck in the same little like hamster wheel with like the podcast and
it's
everything.
tricky, isn't it? In an ideal world, I would just outsource this stuff and, you know, give the work to other content creators who are doing amazing things, but I can't afford to do that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's just an interesting, and you know what, in 2 weeks time I might change my mind completely, but at the moment it's all just kind of milling around my head and going, I'm not sure. I don't have aspirations to be a social media influencer, you know, whatever that might be. And I have a lot of friends who work in that space and who are doing good things. I think, you know, the word influencer just conjures up people who want to jump the queue and get a free meal and, you know, try and sell you lipstick or whatever. Um, but
Bored Panda is full of those examples of the influencers who are
100%. But I do think that within the disabled and chronically ill community, we can see influencing being used for good.
Mm-hmm.
We can see people who are creating content which will genuinely be helpful to other disabled and chronically ill people. And you know, and I think that's wonderful, and I applaud my friends in those spaces who are doing really good things. But I've kind of come to the realization that I'm not sure I want to be in that space. In an ideal world, I would just have a newsletter mailing list of my entire readership, and you know, everybody who follows me everywhere would just sign up to my newsletter, and that would be it. I think that's probably the direction I'm going to take it in.
That's a really good point, because there's a whole bunch of people who are in a lot of different industries that say that that's the way to do it, because you can't control Twitter. Like I've probably been shadow banned on Instagram at least 10 times.
Oh my goodness.
And it's like, you can't control that. I signed their terms of service. So when they feel like I've failed at that, one of the times was because I drew something with breasts on it, and I did not hide that the drawing had breasts on it, and so my art site has like still been shadow banned. It was just really like, okay, well, that's they have a business. I agree to their terms. If
Yeah.
they, for whatever arbitrary reason, feel like I failed at those terms, they have the right to shadow. Fine, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like, it makes so much more sense for people to work on that newsletter, that you actually own that newsletter and
I think
you have more control over.
It's the thing that I love the most at the moment of everything that I'm working on, because I don't have to worry about algorithms. I don't have to worry about SEO. I don't have to, like, it's a captive audience. I can guarantee that 100% of the people on my mailing list will receive the email.
And yours is the only one I read. Of all of the mailing lists I get, I only read yours.
I can't guarantee that everyone will open it, and I can't guarantee that everyone will click the links, but I can guarantee that it will get to everybody.
And the sad thing is, I don't live on your continent. I can't go do any of the things you're talking about. It is like this like inspiration porn stuff for me. Like, wrong words. It's like this like super like happy brain moment of like looking through your like, newsletter of like, oh, I want to do that. Oh, I could do that if I ever get over to your continent. Like,
well, you will. We will make this happen.
But you won't get rid of me once I get there. Once I get there, I'll be like, you know what, maybe I could, you know, I could totally stay Scotland. I could live there.
So could I.
Isle of Skye. I say we just buy like as much of that island as possible, make it completely accessible.
Let's do it. So yeah, that's where I'm at the moment. I'm thinking a lot about where I spend my energy, and I'm trying to consciously make decisions about that, rather than just reverting to habit of opening Twitter or Instagram or saying yes to everything that lands in my inbox.
Don't you feel like a little mouse with a pellet thing, like the psychological test they used to do back in the 70s with the mice and the pellet, where they would just like keep hitting it and just like waiting to see if something good would come?
Totally. My friend has an analogy which is my favorite, which is like constant, like she said Facebook. So constantly checking Facebook is like keeping and going to open the refrigerator when you haven't been shopping. You know that you haven't been shopping, because you know that there's nothing good in there. You know that it hasn't got anything more to offer you, but no matter what, you'll consume something that you don't want before long, because that's all that's there. And this is what I always think about when I get to like social media burnout.
That's a good analogy there.
Yeah, I think so.
You're just gonna find some like milk that's gone off. You're gonna find some moldy produce, and you know, I feel that.
So anyway, that's my social media whinge.
It's a good one to talk about right now, because there's a lot of disabled people who are trying new things. They're starting new projects. I'm starting a new business right now. We're launching today or tomorrow. And it's like, how do you do that with like social media and like maintaining the creativity to run the business that you're trying to run and then promote that business? Like that's a whole nother, in any other company, that's an entirely different job. Like,
yeah, well, it's a department. It's a whole department just to run that stuff, you know, and that is what I do in my day job. And the fact that I do it in my day job is actually fine, because I'm doing that for somebody else. My personal me can be separated from that. because it's not my thoughts or my feelings or, you know, whatever that I'm writing or posting about. And I can switch off at the end of the day. But, you know, the problem that I find with the world of blogging, freelancing, social media content creation, it is 24/7. You are expected to be on and to be reachable all of the time and to have an opinion about everything. Nobody needs to have an opinion about everything.
I think J.K. Rowling just proved that you should not have an opinion about everything. Like, there are some things maybe you just don't speak about, like, unless you're an expert
Yeah,
in.
I know. So I don't know. I mean, I've definitely come full circle because, yeah, I've spent a huge amount of this year on social media. I've spent a huge amount of time doing things like working on SEO, trying to work out my content strategies and stuff like that. And
Oh God, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. That just like physically pained me. 'Cause that's what we're dealing with right now, and I'm like, I don't want to.
I know that I'm in a privileged position because I have, you know, I've got to the stage now where I've come back to my day job and things there are relatively secure. And it's made me realise that I don't necessarily want that other stuff, that it doesn't actually make me very happy. Look, I'm not going to delete all of my social media accounts overnight, and I am still going to have a presence, and I am, you know, I'm still going to be posting and writing and blogging, but just a bit less, just a bit more gently, I think, and a bit more purposefully and consciously, because I got myself into a place where I was like, you have to write every single week. You have to post a blog post every single week, and it has to be on the same day, and it has to go on all the social media platforms, and it has to go in your newsletter, and you have to post on social media every day. And then, like, why? Why?
I've heard that same advice, and they're like, people expect it, and they won't pay attention to you if it's not the same time, the same space. I'm like, did Twitter make up that law? Did Facebook, did Google decide that was like saying they were going to lie to us about? I don't have the emotional or mental energy to give the slightest fuck when
Yeah,
someone posts something. It's like, oh, that's new. Oh, I like them. That's exciting. I'll listen to that. Like,
yeah,
I have
yeah,
no idea when they posted it. It could have been 6 months ago. Like,
exactly. You don't even
who
notice. You
actually
don't
knows
even
or
know.
cares about that? And even if like 3 people did, do they care enough that they'd be mad at you to like
Yeah.
be like, oh, forget her, she posted on Tuesday, like whatever,
And
like.
like, you know, even if they were, like, that's all right. Like, you don't actually have to please everybody. And
And it's
yeah,
free content, aren't they?
yeah,
Like, I could get it if they were paying for the content, but it's free
yeah,
content.
absolutely. So I do think it's an interesting conversation. It's one that I'm having with a few people at the moment, and I think it is definitely like social media burnout, because there's been much less boundary around that sort of thing this year, I feel, because, you know, we have all been shut at home. So yeah, so you might be seeing a little bit less from me on Facebook and Twitter, maybe a few less regular blog posts, but I'm hoping more sort of conscious and quality content. Fingers crossed.
I- it can only make things better, you know. Like, and who needs more noise in the world? Like, if we're just producing things because we're like, oh my goodness, it's Tuesday, let me come up with my brilliant aspirations about the world,
Yeah.
and all, like, that never goes well. That's why we
No.
have so much white noise out there, is because like there's so much like just humming out there of like really creative, clever people who are forced to like put something out or say something about something that they're not passionate or excited about, and they just sort of like
Exactly.
hum.
And I think, you know, I am a person who I said this last time, I'm a workaholic, and I'm not very good at boundaries in that way. And I do have a lot of passion, but I need to keep a bit of that for me,
That would be
actually.
good.
And you know, just kind of not give it all away. And, you know, I was listening to a podcast earlier. So there's a couple of guys in this country. So Phil Friend and Simon Minty, and they have a podcast called The Way We Roll. And it's in fact, it's how I discovered podcasts. It's one of my favorites. But, you know, they were talking about how, because everything's on Zoom, we're all saying yes to more. We're all saying yes to more meetings because we don't have to worry about the 2-hour commute to get to the next meeting because, oh, we can squeeze in 15 minutes in between these two or whatever. And what we're not saying yes to is booking appointments with ourselves. Like, okay, so you said yes to that person, but who did you have to say no to so you could fit that in? Did you say no to yourself? Like, it's just, I feel like there's a bit of a culture shift at the moment where we're all going, right, it might be time to just slow down a little bit.
And it's harder. Like I said, I was just listening to Elizabeth Gilbert and Tim Ferriss podcast. It was Tim Ferriss's podcast where he interviewed Elizabeth Gilbert, and he was like, you're really good at no. And she was like, yeah, it's a complete sentence. It's no, thank you. And that's it. Because if you give anyone any leeway, people are emotionally manipulative. It's not a bad thing. It's kind of like how most of us are. It's like, not that we're being mean, but we just say, oh no, because you can't make it to this event. Hey, Zoom, I can Zoom with you. Totally cool. No worries. Like everyone's kind of guilty of like, if you want something badly enough of like kind of finding a way to make it happen. She's like, it's just no and thank you. And if they keep pushing, you just say, you'll be the first person I will let know if I change my mind. I was like, this is brilliant. I need to tattoo this somewhere.
So I listened to Elizabeth Gilbert being interviewed on another podcast, and she talked about the time that she literally just opened up her inbox and deleted the entire thing.
I've actually done that before, and I'm sorry if you're one of the people who emailed me, but just because I had a panic attack, like I was having a panic attack looking at 10,000 emails.
Yeah, I mean, on a much smaller scale, but I've been struggling a bit with some physical health stuff over the last couple of weeks, and some definitely increased fatigue, which is what's brought me to a lot of these decisions. And I sent a couple of emails last week for some freelance work that I had committed to, but I think my motivation wasn't really there. My motivation was probably more financial than anything else.
Yeah,
which is important, but that was the only way it was serving me. It wasn't serving me in any other way. And I sent a couple of emails just sort of explaining my situation and saying, you know what, I'm actually not going to be able to fulfill this piece of work, but thank you for thinking of me. And what a good feeling that is.
It's a beautiful feeling.
Just to put yourself first.
Yeah, I usually take November off, so I'm trying to get everything set up for the next 2 months so that I can take November. It's NaNoWriMo, which is the National Novel Writing Month.
Okay.
So you're supposed to write a novel in 30 days, and I've done this for the last 3 years, and it's like, it's awesome because I am one of the people who overcommits to everything because I get this I have this sort of mania schedule going where I can convince myself I can do anything in 2 weeks. Anything can get done in 2 weeks. And my body's like, that's so fucking cute, girl. Like, that's never gonna, when in the world has this ever worked for you? I mean, when? And I get this idea of like, I could just get everything done. And I probably could if I just focused on one thing for 2 weeks. But I can't because I've committed myself to a billion different things and projects because this other one looks really shiny.
Because there's just so much noise as well. None of us can focus on one thing.
No, but NaNoWriMo, I can focus on. It's 1 month. You write 2,000 words a day. I have my little cottage. I sit in my cottage where my chickens run around, and I write for every single day pretty much. And it's just really cool. I usually take that whole month off and I just write my novel.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah. But September and October bite because I am trying to set everything up so that nothing falls apart. But this is the year that I have Eva and I've got Jason and I have oh gosh, oh so sorry, oh my gosh, I can see his face. Why can't I think of his name? He's doing the sex podcast, sex and disability podcast. So I have other podcasters on the network now where it's like I might be able to start taking a step back from this and work on some health stuff and write more.
Yeah I think I'm in a pretty similar headspace. That's what I'm thinking. Not that I have people to sort of to support, but something's got to give. You can't do everything, and particularly from a health point of view, that is what I need to focus on at the moment. I need to focus on some body stuff and some mind stuff that is going to get me in a place where things feel a bit more stable and sustainable. And if that means that I've got to go on Instagram a bit less, then That's what I'm gonna do.
But this is such a good conversation because, there's so many people who are like, well, I'm sick, so I've got to start my own thing. And then they're like, okay, so this is cool because I don't have to commute. I don't have to be in the location. I can do this all from bed from a laptop. So I can do all the things. And Carrie and I are here to say, no, you can't. Like, even from bed, even it's actually almost more exhausting because there's no stop point.
There is no stop point, and there's no support team. There's no, one of the reasons that I love my day job so much is that I work with an incredible team of people who are very supportive, who, even if we're working on separate projects, I can pick up the phone and just offload a bit about whatever's frustrating me. And that is so important. And I have definitely learned over the last 3 months that actually I am not cut out for just working on my own, for just, for like, I totally understand that freelance life is a much more accessible way of working for a lot of people. And actually it's taken a few months of trying it for me to realize that it doesn't suit me, that it doesn't serve me, and that actually, I am fortunate that I can work from home anyway, that I can have flexible working anyway within my employment. So I guess I kind of get the best of both worlds there. But it certainly taught me that I'm not ready to take the leap to being more reliant on freelance work. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop writing, but I'm going to be a bit more picky, I think.
That's brilliant. And it's always good to have like an office person that you can, like, you say that person just really screwed up. So right now it's my cat. So if I ever tell you that Pandora deleted your email, just understand she's a very sweet tabby who stepped on my computer.
Amazing.
Yeah. I need to name them something more realistic. So when I say like Meows just deleted everything, like who? Like, oh, Mark just screwed everything up. We don't know what to do with Mark. He's getting fired soon.
So I'm in a Facebook group for women working in journalism in the UK, freelancers specifically, and there was this whole thread about how they all have made up male personal assistants.
I love this so much.
Because
that's excellent.
In the sexist world that we live in, it makes negotiating much easier.
Yep.
If you can refer to your assistant John, who is going to negotiate and up your fee by 20%. And this is like proven and genuinely works when they go, if I email as John and say I can only do this date, then that's accepted. If I email as me, a female, and say, well, I can only do this date, well, can you not move it? Have you got no flexibility? It's a sad thing. I wish that it wasn't effective, but there was like, tens of people in this thread going, oh yeah, I do that too, and it works really well.
It really does.
Maybe we all need male personal assistants.
There was this couple who they talked about it really publicly. They both did the same exact job. They worked from home, so almost all their stuff was done by, no one knew what they looked like. None of the clients knew what they looked like, and they worked for a boss. And it was a husband and wife, and they just switched each other's accounts. So they just took over, like she took over all of his old accounts, he took over all of hers, and then they said that they were, the other person. And his productivity dropped by 30%. His boss called him in. It's like, what are you doing differently? He's like, this is what we did. All I did was I started signing my name as her. I took over her accounts, and I did exactly what she'd been doing. I signed it with her name. He's like everything slowed down to almost nothing because of exactly what you said. Can't it be more flexible? What about this? Yeah. Hey, I know you said this, but I know better than you, so try this. And her productivity shot up because no one was questioning her anymore. She was just like, this is what we're gonna do. They're like, okay, that's what we're gonna do.
Completely. Like, I mean, I want to say it's shocking, but it isn't shocking.
It's so not shocking. It is not. 2016 proved to us that this is not shocking. At no point should this shock anyone. Like, we're streaming Parks and Rec. It's the first time I've ever watched Parks and Rec. I don't know if that's a thing over there for you, but it viscerally hurts because it's so true. Of like, she's running against this guy who's like, I don't know what I'm doing. And they're like, yay! And she's like, I have a plan for everything. And they're like, bored. Like, wow, this is so what we are dealing with.
Well,
like,
Yeah, well, it's almost like predicting the future, isn't it?
Please don't say that. Please. I can't take another 4 years of this. I'm gonna cry. I just can't.
I'm not
I'm
at
so
all.
like I don't think that people realize just how traumatized we all are. Like and this is like from a white woman, I feel traumatized. Like all
Yeah,
of our, all of the Black people in this country are so desperately traumatized. Everyone is exhausted and scared, but there are so many other, people who are even more rightfully terrified. And this
yeah,
country is just like I feel so exhausted and traumatized, and I don't think that we're processing this well, and we're all alone processing it. And
yeah, yeah. It's certainly. I mean, there's definitely similar vibes here,
yeah,
with the complete mismanagement of everything from the Conservative government. And I read. I can't remember what it was about specifically, but I did read something on Twitter that was like, if this was it was about the algorithm for exam results in this country. So because schools have been closed and things,
yeah,
there was like algorithm marking down students. I'm probably doing this a disservice because I don't know enough about it in detail, but the gist of it was like, if this was a privately contracted company, as in if the government was a privately contracted company that had been brought in to do this, they would have been sacked a
yeah.
long time ago. Nobody would have paid their bills, like off and gone. So yeah, I definitely understand your political woes.
I just think that we need to stop calling them conservatives. I think we need to start calling them the FU party, because the whole
Yeah,
idea was that it was supposed to be conservative based on values and based on saving money. And so
yeah,
far, at least our government has tripled our deficit. And the only time our deficit has come down is under Democratic leaders. Every conservative leadership we've had has
mhm,
desperately increased our deficit by 2 to 3 times, like up into the billions and trillions of dollars. So like
yeah.
that doesn't feel very conservative. Like,
No.
and then their personal values. Right now we have a president who has cheated on every single wife he's had, and has assaulted teenagers and bragged about it. And it's like, so this isn't like, morally conservative. So
No,
they need a
no,
new
where's
name. This
that
is
coming
not, this
from?
is false advertising at this point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, much the same here. I'm not going to get into it because it
Oh, I'm
won't.
sorry. See, this is why I shouldn't have done that Twitter thing before. Yes, I have enough energy to talk to you and I'm focused, but now I'm focused on the wrong things. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
So
That's all right.
sorry.
So I think you said that you wanted us to talk about my opinion pieces,
Yes.
my writing in that way. And I have since published another one since I last spoke to you. So I published my thoughts on asking for help and why that is so difficult for me as a disabled person. All right, I don't know how you feel about this, but I identify as somebody who copes, who is always seen to be coping, and who is not very good at holding my hands up and going, do you know what, I just need some help. And I feel like I have to go through that almost like manic, I'm coping, burnout because I can't cope anymore, and then ask for help. I have to go through that really frustrating cycle every time, because um I've spent my life being praised for coping, for dealing with everything that I've got to deal with. I went to mainstream school. I walked with crutches up until I was a teenager, and I was praised for doing that. I was praised for walking. Now, I think it's important to say at this point, I don't portion any blame to those people, those physios and family members and stuff, because they were doing the best they had with the knowledge and the tools that they had. But looking back on it, I do believe that kind of approach is quite psychologically damaging, because I spent the next 30 years being a people pleaser, being someone who seeks approval from other people, not necessarily in a disability way. I've kind of, I've come to terms with all of that, and I'm very comfortable with my disabled identity. But it does mean that I want to be the best at whatever else I'm doing, that I want to excel, and that when things go wrong, I am not very good at always admitting that things are going wrong. So I wrote a big long article about that, spewed out my stream of consciousness, and it seemed to resonate with a lot of people. So yeah, and thank you, because you sort of in a way inspired me to do that, because you were telling me about how much you enjoyed my writing in that way.
I love your writing. And that's a great topic. I mean, I don't think that there's any disabled person who doesn't feel like they have to sing for their supper, that we don't have to push ourselves to prove our space in the world.
Yeah, and make our needs smaller, and not necessarily vocalize what we do actually need.
Exactly. And we're praised for behaving.
Yeah.
We're praised for surviving. I mean, that's what inspiration porn is about. It's like, oh my God, you got up and did a thing. Good job. It's like, we're not praised for pushing forward what we need so that we can do big, amazing things. And even if that big, amazing thing is sitting up, cheers, like
100%. Yeah.
But that we are not asking for what we need to do, whatever it is we feel we need to do in the world. And that's a praiseworthy moment, is for not asking, for not being a problem.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing, and a lot of people came back to me and were like, "Oh my God, have you seen inside my brain?"
It's like that infantilization of disabled people. It's like we're being praised for things that you would praise a toddler for. You were so well behaved. You're so quiet. You're so good. You sat up. You stood. You walked. Like it's this very weird, like almost like we're being praised for things that you would praise a baby for or a toddler for.
So I get praised for independence a lot, because I am able at the moment to live reasonably independently, but that also means that I'm expected to do that. But the people around me expect me to live independently, and so when I do need help, I don't really know how to ask for that. And people will offer help, but they also don't really know how or what to offer, because Carrie-Ann just lives independently. So it's a really tricky thing. And again, I'm not portioning blame. I think it's complex for everybody involved. Because when I do finally get to the point that I'm so exhausted that I realise what I do need help with, and I ask directly for what I do need help with, the people around me are very helpful, and that's great. But I do think there's this kind of double-edged sword of, because we're appearing to be coping so well with everything that we've got, we're appearing to be so independent and whatever, we appear to have all of our shit together, that when we don't, it kind of makes it double hard.
I feel that.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Sorry, that just took me a minute. Like, it's like, yeah, because it's taking away another thing, at least for like how I feel. It's like, if I'm admitting that I need more help and that I can't do the thing I said I was going to do, it's almost like another loss, another step back in my disorder, another like losing ground.
Yeah, it's interesting, because my health up until recent years has been fairly static for all of my life, and my ability has been fairly static, and so I guess I've kind of got this internalized pressure to be able to do all of the things that everybody else is doing. Walking taken out of the equation, like that, it's not even in my headspace. I've got no desire to walk at all. I've got much bigger ambitions.
Can I get that on a t-shirt? No, please put that on a t-shirt.
Honestly, like, it doesn't make life better. I used to walk. I don't walk now. My life is better now. But I think I feel this internalized pressure to, it's again, it's the Instagram generation, isn't it? It's, seeing so and so has cooked a wonderfully nutritious and healthy meal every night this week, so I must do the same. And that other person, they've taken their family out for a wholesome day to the beach, and so I must do the same. And it's this, I wrote about this in another article for a different website. It's the should voice. It's the voice that's in your head telling you what you should be doing. So that you don't actually do what you want to be doing or what your body needs. So, you know, my should voice might be saying, well, no, actually don't sit down and read a book. You should be writing, or you should be working on the website, or you should be exercising, or you should be walking the dog. And my brain is desperately trying to tell me, just sit down and read a book for an hour. And it's about trying to override that should voice and to make the voice that tells you what you actually do need louder.
That's a very helpful thing. I'm desperately grateful that when I had my son, my first child, there was no social media. There was
Mm-hmm.
none of these like bloggers telling you how to be the perfect parent. There was no Instagram of like the perfect children's party. Like none of this existed. All I had was the pressure of other parents, which was a lot. But
Yeah,
there's no like constant, oh my God, you're doing this wrong. And then when my other one was born, it was just like the beginning of all this. Now watching all my friends have babies right now and dealing with like this nonstop barrage of what you should be doing
yeah.
it's insane. And like I feel like I'm sorry, this is a long way around, and please forgive me, I haven't taken my painkillers yet, so my brain's just like this rabid psychotic hamster. The long way around to that is that there's certain times in your life when you're a temporarily abled person where your body becomes public, and that is when you're a
Yeah,
parent. When you're
yeah,
going to have a baby, when you have a baby, your life and your body is a public property, and people feel free to comment on it. Now, when you're disabled, it is always public property.
yeah,
People always feel the need to comment on what you should be doing, how you should be living. And then society holds up the self-reliant disabled person as this is your goal. You should try
yeah,
to mimic temporarily abled people as much as possible. Walk, work, do all the things, like ape
yeah.
this person and pretend to be
And
this
that
person that you
and
may or
that
may not be
gets
able to.
internalized. Like that just seep into your consciousness and your brain. You know, there is only so much of that you can hear and you can live through, particularly when you've grown up in it. Without it, you know, so it's a tricky thing to work against. And I think, again, you know, just recently, so I started the working day this morning working in my bed, and I worked in my bed for 2.5 hours this morning. And 12 months ago, I would have told myself I couldn't do that. I would have beaten myself up for doing that. I would have said it's just not proper. And you should get up early and you should walk the dog before you start working. You should eat a healthy breakfast, and you know, do all of these things. And because I do have a tendency to, you know, I do struggle with fatigue, but I do have times where I am definitely manic that can sometimes last for weeks and weeks, where I just don't hear my body. I don't
Yeah.
hear the fatigue. I genuinely don't feel it. And I guess that must be really difficult for people to understand if they do really struggle with fatigue a lot of the time. But, you know, when I'm in a stage where I'm just so fixated on like the work that I've got to do or whatever, I don't feel hunger. I don't feel tiredness. Those signals just don't get to me. Does that make any sense?
It makes perfect sense because I'm not saying that I have manic depression. I'm not saying that that I even understand manic depression, but I will say I understand is that I know I have a time limit. And I don't know
Yeah,
exactly what that limit's going to be, but I know it's going to be extreme and there's going to be a definite moment where this all stops. So I feel like this mania to get everything that has to get
yeah,
done in the small period of time where I might be able to do it.
yeah. Yeah, I feel exactly the same, and I would say the same as you. You know, I don't have any kind of official diagnosis of anything, but I do know that I have cycles when I'm not necessarily looking after myself as well as I could be.
Yeah.
So, you know, the last 7 days I have felt much more on a level, much more stable, but I've been consciously making decisions about what's the best thing for me to do. And I don't know, maybe other people just live like that normally. um,
I don't think so. I would love to think so, but I think we'd have a much healthier society if everyone was like, is, if we can't be gentle with ourselves, it makes it really hard for us to be gentle with other people. So you see a lot of people online who are like, or you know, in our lives who are like, well, I did the thing, I bootstrapped my life, so you should be able to. And it's like, this is not inspiring or helpful. Like, and that person's obviously not very gentle with themselves. They're not honoring the struggles they went through. They're not honoring with the people who actually helped them along their bootstrapping. Like, so I think if we aren't gentle with ourselves, it leads to a society of people who aren't gentle at all.
Exactly, and I think there's so much around this like perceived expectation, because I would, I would be like, oh my goodness, I need to make sure I get up, so I go and open the curtains, because my if my house is like still in darkness and it's the middle of the day, well, what are people going to think? I don't care. I don't
Oh my
care.
goodness. No, I feel that. Have you watched Last Christmas? That it was kind of billed as a silly rom-com, and I think it was billed wrong.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Did you see it?
I think so. I'm trying to
It's
remember.
it's a Game of Thrones Mother Dragons is like the main girl in it, and she gets a heart
Okay.
transplant, and I'm not going to spoil it, but there's this thing that goes on with this person that she's really found a connection with, and he's telling her like we have this like rush to be special and this rush to be amazing when sometimes just being a human is really hard.
Yeah.
And that like it's okay to like find like you don't have to be the rock star with like the thousands of screaming fans or Neil Gaiman level of like writer's fame. Like you just do the thing you're passionate about doing and do it as well as you can, and then see where it goes from there. And it's okay just to be human sometimes. Like you don't have to be.
Totally.
It was a
And
beautiful movie. I'm sorry, I'm totally going off topic, but that's all I was talking about, this pressure to be amazing, this mania,
yeah,
and this movie really helped like put it into like a little bit of a philo perspective.
definitely. And I think that is the thing, is that it's FOMO for me. It is like
Oh, yes.
FOMO fueled by social media, basically. So I'm like, constantly exposed to people who I perceive as being more successful than me. Um, and I'm going, well, so and so's done this and so and so's done that. Well, I need to do something like that. And why wasn't I invited to do that thing? And then, just take a minute, take a breath, take a step back. I don't want to. I actually don't want to. There's just a bit of my brain telling me that I should want to.
Yes. I actually had to does any of my family listen to this? I don't think any of my family will listen to this, so I will just freely discuss. I come from a family of Victoria's Secret models who are all very brilliant, and Pinterest mothers and Instagram mothers who do everything perfectly all the time,
Yeah.
constantly. And we had a thing going because there's like 25 of us cousins, and we were doing this like every week Zoom meeting, and it honestly started to affect my mental health. And I'm like, I can't do it. And I listened to Elizabeth Gilbert about like the sacred no, and I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm using it. And so I called the cousin that I'm like super close to. I was like, this is actually starting to hurt me. And she's like, okay, so we do it once a month. Is once a month okay? And I was like, actually, I think I could do once a month. I think that would be okay. But the every week is starting to affect my mental health. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, but it's having that realization, isn't it? Because I think often, and I know myself definitely, it will take me to a point where it is really, really affecting me before I realize that it's really,
yeah.
it's like the constant tweeting or whatever. It's been affecting me for quite a while, but until I get to like burnout, I don't actually realize that it's been affecting me, and that I guess I'm envious of people with more self-awareness than that.
Are there people with more who has that awareness? I don't know any person who has that level of self-awareness who is not out there like teaching classes on how to have that awareness. I
Yeah,
don't know anyone.
yeah. You're not going to get my money. Um,
Can we just have like a moment for please, for the love of God, do not send me your classes or I will not do it. I know life coaches. I'm so sorry if that's what you do, but oh my God, there's just like this inundation of like, I have figured out the secrets to humaning, and for the low price of $70 a month, I will teach you. Like, I just can't with that anymore. I'm sorry. Like, I'm so inundated with it that it feels like religion to me at this point of like, I have the answers.
do you think that it's worse in the US? Like,
I couldn't speak to it because I don't know what's going like the UK I visited once and only for 3 days, and I visited France many times and Italy. I could not speak to your culture over there.
like we definitely get life coaches, and we definitely get like people who've discovered the secret to Google's algorithm or whatever. You know, I can teach you to make $1 million from your blog in just 30 days. But I wonder, because you guys have had like an accepted culture of therapy for so long, like
We also have
if
an accepted culture of snake oil and
yeah,
of tent preachers. That was like the big thing in the 30s, was like the tent preachers that would use like the old magic tricks and
yeah,
audience plants to like fake that they can walk again. And it's like, miracle, now give me all your money. Like we have like, that is like literally a huge part of our history in the United States, is this sort of like showmanship and
yeah,
the over promising and
yeah,
the you know, the like tap dance and hand wave and jazz hands until you actually can deliver.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, no, I get that, definitely. I just, you know, because so I've just recently started with a sort of a private therapist, and that's becoming more common in this country. Like, obviously we have our NHS, but mental health support services, like the entire of the NHS, is completely underfunded, and so
and gutted, yeah.
you know, it's very, very difficult to access support for mental health without paying privately for it. But I do feel like the US has more of a culture of it's acceptable to be in therapy, whatever.
If you're on the coast, if you're on one of the coasts, yes. If you are in the middle of the country, there are entire states where there's only one therapist. And when I
Oh,
say state, if you're in the UK, let me explain. A state is about the size of UK, the entire
yeah,
UK. Like
yeah,
our states are huge. Like you have like hundreds of thousands of millions of people who have access to one therapist. If you're on the coast, yes, super accepted.
yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because of the way that mental health services work within the NHS is that you have to be at breaking point before you can get any support. That's how they ring fence that funding,
Yeah.
basically. And you know, I started up with a therapist again recently, and I'm paying privately, and I literally had this conversation with myself where I was like, well, I'm not as bad as I have been before, but I don't have to wait for that. Like, I don't have to wait. I can just do it now when I feel semi good, and it'll help me feel better.
Oh my God, I so feel you. I need a therapist desperately. I really do. I'm at a point where I can honestly say, like, I went through a week of depression last week where I barely got out of bed.
Mhm.
But I can't afford one because over
Yeah.
here they're between 150 to $1,000 an hour.
Oh my goodness.
And like my sister, where she lives, they're $1,000 an hour just to have an intake to see if you're even compatible. I'm like, I couldn't pay $1,000 for that. There's no way. Like, and yeah, so like we couldn't afford a $400 bill every month for me to do therapy, but like, yeah, I would love to. It'd be super helpful.
Yeah, yeah, but I do feel like the culture in this country is much more like there has to be something wrong. Like, I genuinely believe that if every person in the world had access to, like, I don't know, 6 weeks worth of therapy,
Yeah.
like, the world would be a different place. Like, you know, we would just, everybody would be much happier and more at peace with
If our
themselves.
world leaders had grown up with parents who hugged them and told them they were valued as human beings, I don't think we'd be here.
Definitely. But I hate this culture of, like, you know, oh, well, I've gone to see a counsellor. Well, why? What's wrong? Like, there doesn't actually have to be something wrong for me to be taken care of. You know, if I said I've gone to the gym, you wouldn't say, well, what's wrong with your body?
Oh my God, that is the best analogy I've ever heard. That is the best way I've ever heard that phrased.
Like, I didn't even know if that was going to make sense. It literally came off the top of my head. I've
No,
picked
that was so good.
now.
I have never heard it phrased that way before. Like usually I'm like, why did you go to therapy? It's like, did you look at the news? We're all living through this like
Yeah,
massive insanity. So we're all stressed. But no, you're right, because it's about like, if you go to the dentist, no one's like, well, what's wrong with your teeth? You're like, I was getting a cleaning. You
yeah,
know, like it's self-care that is like about managing your, like I've never even thought about therapy as just like a level of not just self-care but maintenance.
yeah,
Like
totally. And I think I realized that I really need that. I maybe don't need it all of the time, but I need like a therapy check-in maybe every 6 months or so, where I am reminded that taking care of that part of me is important.
Oh my
And
gosh, you are
that's,
so brilliant.
I mean, I could not have had this conversation with you 2 weeks ago. It's taken a process.
But see, look, like the therapy is working. You've come to this process. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
No, I am going to be using that. That's wonderful.
I just think it's interesting how different the culture around this sort of thing is, because you know, as you say, yes, you need to be in the right area and you need to have the finances to access therapy where you live, but it is generally seen as just a thing that people do.
And
um
there's the online therapy right now where I don't know if you guys have that, but we have it here where there's like an app where you can, it's $75 a month where you can have access to a therapist. I think it's like you get a half hour once a week and then as many emails as you need, which is so not what I would ever do because I can't read emails at all.
yeah,
But my sister uses it and she loves it. She thinks it's been fantastic and it's something she can afford.
that's amazing.
Yeah,
That
so at least that's a possibility for people who have no access to any, like if you live in Nebraska where I think there's only two therapists in the entire state, or if you're in an area where you just can't reach. Like that's the other thing about mental health and disability is the physical access to get to a office. Like my old therapist who I liked, I can't get into his office. It's stairs to get in. And then he's at
so
the bottom thing. There's no elevators.
yeah, so that was what actually persuaded me to sort of give it a go this time round, is that I can meet my therapist on Zoom, and
Yeah.
that's what we're doing, and it does make it much more accessible to me. But she made a really interesting point which I hadn't thought about before, which is, remember that by doing it this way you have not got that journey time to process. So particularly the journey home afterwards, whether you realize it or not, your brain is unconsciously doing stuff, and you know, and that might be just because you're walking home, you're wheeling home, you're driving home. If you're sat at your desk and you're having a Zoom call like we are now, and then you turn off and you go straight into your emails or whatever, you're interrupting
Right.
that process. So we're sort of like, you know, we finish the session and then I go out for a dog walk just to try
Oh,
and have some journey time. But I hadn't even thought of that as being a thing. But it
that's
quite,
a brilliant piece of advice there for everyone. If you have a Zoom therapy call, to make sure you afterwards have a cup of tea in the garden or walk a dog
yeah,
or
just have some space. There's some science that says that if there is going to be a shift in your brain and things like neural pathways and that sort of thing, it will happen between 30 minutes and 6 hours after you've had a therapy session.
mm,
And that if you make yourself too busy in that time, if you make your brain sort of get stuck into something like work, you're really limiting that capacity for change and for a mental shift, and it just won't happen. So that it also means that I've really reclaimed my days off, because my therapy session happens on my day off. So then I'm sort of, no, you can't work after this, because like
oh,
that would be bad, because you've just invested this time and this money in this therapy, and if it's going to work properly, you need to not do work now.
that is absolutely brilliant. What a wonderful piece of advice.
This is all from the therapist. This is like
One of my
so,
favorite things about Tumblr is people like giving like their best advice they've gotten from a therapist. Like that's one of my favorite like Tumblr threads was like, oh cool, free therapy. This is awesome.
yeah. So if anybody is doing virtual or even, you know, physical face-to-face therapy, try not to put too much pressure on yourself afterwards. Try and just have some quiet reflection space.
That is brilliant. And my jaw's dislocating. So since we're at an hour, I am going to call it and see if I can reset my jaw. But thank you so much for being on. I hope we get to see you again very soon.
Thank you for having me.
And
I hope it's been useful. I realise that this has been a bit more kind of ranty than our last.
That would be my fault entirely, but I don't think it
No, I don't.
wasn't. I think that we covered social media and how is we both are content creators, and there's a lot of people who are trying content creation for the first time. Like Amazon sold out of all their microphones. Like that tells you how many people are starting podcasts. Like so we did a whole thing on social media
Yeah,
sanity with content creation. We talked about therapy and how to process therapy, and how if world leaders had had parents who had therapy and hugged them, we probably would have a better world. So I think we covered a lot of good stuff too in the
I
middle of,
think.
and most of the ranting was on I did most of the horrible ranting, and I will take full responsibility for that.
That's all right. Well, I hope that it's been helpful to the people listening. And yeah, if you are starting out on your content creation journey, like that's a brilliant thing. Don't think that it isn't, but set your boundaries. Give don't give all of yourself. Keep some of yourself for you.
Very, very, like most of what you said, very good advice. Well, I hope you come back on very soon. Invisible Not Broken is now a network. I am Monica Michelle with Explicitly Sick. Eva has Human Care. Jason has Discomfort Zone. And Dr. Phillips, so sorry, Dr. Phillips, I love you. It has Chronic Illness and Sex. We have some other podcast hosts who are training right now to come to you with their own podcast. So this has been a very exciting journey from a one-person little podcast to an entire network. It's very, very thrilling. So please listen to their podcast as well. This is kind of unprecedented times, and there's a lot going on, and it's very hard to manage what our bodies are able to do and what we want to do for the world. So be very kind to yourself and to others. Be gentle with yourself so that you can be gentle with others, and in whatever way it looks like to you, be a badass.